strap your boots on and get ready for a battle.
The thing with planning is, firstly, make sure that what you're trying to do is within policy.
They have a lot of power.
It's almost like a no first. If I say no, it's easier to say no.
We were granted everything we wanted, and then they turned around and went, oopsie, our bad. And then the next morning, rejected.
Get a good planning consultant. That is the key. Knowledge is power, and get a consultant on board who knows that council, knows the planning officers, and is confident they'll get things through.
Oh yeah, it can add significant value just by getting that planning.
Don't try and do this on your own. This is not something... Building wealth through property isn't about chasing big deals and paydays. It's about owning assets that make money for you consistently. But figuring it all out on your own, that's where most people get stuck. That's why we created this Property Life membership. It's everything we wish we had when we started. Expert guidance, real-world case studies, and a private community of investors actually doing deals, not just talking about them. So you could spend years trying to piece it all together yourself, or you could plug into a system that's already working for our community. Check out our membership page at This Property Life. Everything you need to know is right there. Success is a team sport. Come join in. Hi, and welcome to This Property Life. It takes you through all the ups and downs, trials and tribulations of property investing. I'm Nick Claydon, and I'm here with my other half, Caroline. Welcome.
Thank
Hello.
you.
This is part 3 of our 4-part series on controlling the uncontrollables.
Well, dealing with the uncontrollables.
So far, we have covered financing and we've covered building control. So when you're dealing with bigger projects, those are 2 of the main things we deal with. And the other ones we need to cover, which we've kind of been putting off really, planning and builders and contractors.
Yeah.
We're going to leave that till last, I think.
Yeah, let's leave the builders to last.
Heads up before we start the show. This Property Life is more than just a brilliant podcast. We are also a thriving network community. We meet online every single week with different property experts and in real life every single quarter to share war stories and insider tips. And the best bit is you can get this absolutely free for 2 months. So head to the link in the description and start networking smart.
So let's tackle the planning system and
Yeah.
dealing with bigger projects where you have planning issues. We can talk some about our experience of what kind of issues we've had to overcome with planning. We'll try not to go into a big rant about the planning system, but I can't promise I won't. But let's start with, in terms of uncontrollable planning, where do we start?
Well, let's talk through the actual process of what you go through, because I know some of our listeners will maybe have never done a planning application, so don't know what's involved. So who do you need to get involved when you're going to go for planning permission? Architect and ideally a planning consultant. Someone who is going to be fighting your corner, somebody who understands the planning process, knows, well, I'm going to say loopholes, but knows the game, knows the rules, how to play. And so there's a couple of options open to you, and there's a lot of debate around what's the correct way and what's the wrong way. And every council around the whole of the UK will have a different planning process. So what we share with you today is not necessarily what you're going to potentially experience when you go through a planning application. And this is relevant for, you doing a house extension on your own home, right the way through to, commercial developments or land developments and the likes. It's just varying degrees of time that it takes and information that you need to provide to the council.
And I think we'll start with saying if you can do any deals where you don't have to go through planning, or you can go through permitted development. So we did HMO developments that we did in England. They were all done under permitted development rights, which allow you to do certain things to your properties without the need to actually go and get planning permission. So things like turning a house into a small HMO up to 6 people under permitted development, unless you're in an Article 4 area, which removes that right. So we did a lot of the work, even loft extensions and complete internal renovations of a property we could do under permitted development rights. So that was a lot easier. Didn't have to go through planning. Did have to get a certificate of lawful use afterwards.
Yeah.
Which was important for lending.
Yeah.
Just to prove that you didn't need planning permission. But yeah, it's a lot easier process. But as soon as you get into anything bigger, any kind of change of use, you are going to need planning. I was sat next to somebody at a dinner the other night, and they were like, "Oh, just buy subject to planning." I'm like, well, yeah, but if you're in a competitive market,
Yes.
you can't.
Yeah.
So the kind of buildings we've been doing, Georgian townhouses in Edinburgh, you can't offer subject to planning because someone will just come in and blow you out of the water with a cash offer. So, yeah, in theory, offering subject to planning and postponing the or not taking on the planning risk is a really good way of doing things. But yeah, somebody else might just come in the cash offer and take the planning risk.
Things to look at if you are looking at potential property to buy and you want to do something to it, add value to it, or change its use in some way, is to actually look around the area to see if anyone else has done that first. There is an argument for precedents being set. So if someone's already done that, then the argument is that planning should be open to it because it's already been done. However, my planning consultant says that doesn't really exist because they can say, yeah, 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 we let that guy and that guy and that guy do it, but we're just going to stop anyone doing that now. So just be a little careful. Look at planning portals, see what other planning applications have been submitted on similar properties in the area or even on the property that you're looking at purchasing, because that will give you an idea of the history, any planning history. I think that's a valid little nugget there because you might have someone who's purchased a property, gone for planning permission for what they want to do. It's been rejected over and over and over again. And then they just try and sell it. And then somebody who doesn't understand the due diligence behind purchasing a property might buy that blindly thinking that they can do what this previous owner has tried to do. And then there's no way they're going to get the planning because he's already applied for it and got rejected. So and the planning portal is found on the local council's website. It's always good to look at it because you can also see the architects that have been working with the council and who've been getting positive planning approved. So that then helps you narrow down and work with people who are potentially going to get you what you want. So there's some little top tips.
Yeah, some good tips there. So the planning portal, just for anyone who's not ever been on that before, every local planning authority will have a portal where you can go on. It's open to public. You can look up any planning application going back many years. Don't know where I go back to since it was digitized. And you can look at everything that's ever been done, or planning approved or planning rejected. So it's a very useful tool to go and just see what's going on in your area. And as Caroline says, brilliant tip there is to look up who are the local architects that have got kind of things through that you're looking to do, what kind of projects. And yeah, it's got all the documents on there so you can get all the plans. When I was doing HMOs down south, I'd use that a lot to go and have a little nosy at what are other people doing. It's quite a competitive, creative market when you're doing HMOs and seeing what's current, who's doing anything, interesting in terms of design that you
Mm.
could kind of borrow,
Borrow.
i.e. steal. So yeah, I mean, there was a couple of little tips there where I saw people that were like creating little staircases that tucked and then tucking en suites behind staircases, things like that. So you can pick up some really good tips from being able to look at the plans that other people are doing. So very useful tool, the planning portal for your local authority.
So there's an option of you going for a pre-app. So a pre-application is where you approach the council to say, this is what I'm wanting to do, and this is what I'm going to, apply to do to your planning process. In principle, are you okay with this? Now, architects and some planning consultants are really keen on the pre-application process because at that point, if you've done a pre-application and it's been accepted, then your planning app should arguably sail through. However, one argument my planning consultant has on this is, what if you put in a pre-application and they reject it cold out the water, done? You've got nowhere to really go with it. You'd have to really drastically change what your pre-app is before you then go for your full planning. So we have never done a pre-app because we want to make sure that we do get exactly what we want, and we'd rather put in the full application for everything straight off the bat, get rejected, and then play the game a little bit of, okay, well, you didn't let me do everything that I wanted, but how about if I take away the dormer and not move that wall that you don't want me to move? Are you happy then? Whereas on a pre-app, it does open the communication,
But
but my
it
planning
gives them a reason to say no straight away.
it does give them a reason straight away. And then, of course, you can't appeal on a pre-app. I mean, you can change it like you would in a normal application, but I can see both sides of this
Yeah,
argument.
I
Our
think it really
experience,
depends what you're doing, right? Because
yeah,
with our one was quite specific. So we're
Yeah.
taking old townhouses that are generally office buildings and converting them to Class 7 in Scotland hotel use, right? So I think rewinding slightly or zooming out slightly, you would want to look at, depending on what the project that you're looking to do, go and firstly have a look at your local development plan from your authority to see, is what you're trying to do within policy? That's the first thing, is if it's not in policy, as in if the council are actively against what you're trying to do, that, don't try and fight them. Don't try and get something through that they're not looking to do. Most local authorities are looking to increase housing stock, right? For example. So as long as you're trying to do something within an area that's been kind of allocated for housing, which again, you'll see in your local development plan, there shouldn't be any real reason why they would reject it. It's more just dealing with the details of it because they need housing. You're going to provide housing. There will be certain things that you'll have to do, but generally speaking, it's within policy, so you should be okay. That's the
Yeah.
kind of thing where you probably might do a pre-app.
So you
If
just
you're
talked about you hang on, you've just talked about policy there, and we haven't even framed what policy is.
Well, that's in the local development plan. So that is kind of generally speaking, a local authority will every 10 years or so, they will create a development plan for the
In the
authority,
area.
the area that it covers to
Yep,
say, what do we need?
yep,
What do we need in terms of development? Do we need more offices? Do we need more housing? Do we need more schools? Do we need more infrastructure? What is in the development plan for the area for the next 10 years? And then they will generally allocate portions of land for certain uses and say, we want to encourage development in this area for this thing. So every authority is different. It's all public information, so you can go and look it up. Go and have a look. It is generally
really
hundreds of
dry.
pages and quite
Have you
tedious.
read it? I haven't
Yeah.
read that's why I pay my
Well,
the planning guy to do, like,
well,
he needs to know that stuff, not me.
yeah, obviously your local planning consultant needs to know that. But I mean, yeah, I haven't read it cover to cover, but I have looked at local development plans and summarized what it is they're looking for. So again, if you're trying to do something a bit outlandish that's against the general policy, you're starting a losing battle from the beginning. So in our case, we were doing something very specific, and it was within the policy. Edinburgh City Council are looking for hotel rooms. They're actively encouraging hotel, allegedly, developments. And so, our consultant was like, well, don't bother with a pre-app because it just gives them an opportunity to say no. It's in policy. So let's just go through that process. And it is, unfortunately, and it shouldn't have to be this, and I'm going to try not to rant, but it is a bit of a game of give and take. That's our experience of it anyway.
There's 2 arguments, although my planning consultant talked about a guy that he worked with, one of his clients, who put in a pre-application to was it build his house or knock his house down and build or something to do with this guy's house anyway, and because he put in the pre-app and it was rejected, that was it. It was, like, dead in the water. There was nothing that they could do because there's no, like, compromise on building a house, is there? Or compromise on knocking your house down and building something new. It's whereas change of use, moving a wall or whatever, you come and go a little bit. So I guess with Stafford Street, we went all in and wanted the dormer on the front. We wanted to move walls to make the proportions of the rooms better. We were knocking the basement around quite a bit with steel and the likes. And what you've got is the added complication of the fact that it was a listed building. So you're not just putting in application for a change of use from office to hotel, we're actually putting in a listed building consent application as well.
So we had
Now,
two planning consents that we required
yeah,
because it was an old
so
building.
one allows you to actually change it into hotel, the other allows you to do the internal works. So, and by law,
Well, a bit
if
more than that, just on the listed building. The listed building consent is about preserving the features which they feel are important, right? So what does that mean? In our case, we're talking about a Georgian building, 250-year-old building. Straight away, the frontage, can't touch it, can't even clean it, right? Which is, to me, beyond crazy and not allowed to clean the front of the building.
but people do it, right? And, the builder we worked with was just like, "Well, clean it, and then what are they gonna do? You need to make that dirty again." You know?
Exactly. There is an argument for that. We could have just cleaned it, and I wish we had, because what they're
Yeah,
going to do, make you put the dirt back on? No, right? But what they're trying to do is preserve the front because they don't want you going in and jet washing it and jet washing out all the
sounds
mortar and
crap.
and taking the surface off the sandstone front of the building, all this kind of stuff. So they say no, you can't do it at all. or you can do it just with water on under low pressure. It's like, well,
That
it's got
doesn't clean
250
anything.
years of grime on there. What's that going to do? Nothing. Anyway, right. So listed building consent is about preserving the features that they want to preserve, and that's a separate part of the council. Is it even part of the council?
No, it's
Not now.
no, they go out
Used
to
to be, but it's not now.
right, so you're getting confused here because when you put in your listed building consent, they go out to consult with
Heritage
Historic
Scotland.
Scotland, right? So when a
Yeah,
planning
no, but
application goes in.
that Historic Scotland used to be part of the, it used to be the council's job to do it, and then they created a different entity called
Yep.
Historic Scotland or Heritage Scotland, which now has the authority to grant permission. Yeah.
They are just still consultants. It's a consultative process. So you put in the planning application to the council and your listed building, put it in, and then they go to environmental health, they go to traffic, they go to different departments to say, if this goes ahead, what impact is it gonna have on your area of specialist area? So, for example, for traffic, if it's gonna be a block of flats, 15, 16 flats, traffic is gonna be like, well, what parking is involved? What access is there?
Highways have a big impact. So they
Yeah,
are a big part of the decision-making process for a new planning
yeah.
application.
Yeah, so you've got highways. Yeah, you've got the amenities argument around, well, is this going to bring more footfall and traffic and noise? So environmental health is about the noise and the smells and all the other stuff that goes with, you know, new restaurants, clubs, flats, whatever it might be. So there's lots of different people they go out to consult. They show the planning to these people and then they wait for reports from those individuals to come back. Now, those reports should have quite a lot of weight, but the council can still ignore them. So even if Historic Scotland say, we are totally cool and the gang with this application, the council can still refuse your listed building consent.
Which
That's
to
the nuts
me,
bit.
and that is basically what happened to us, and for me, that's kinda crazy because it's almost like they're looking for reasons not to grant it. It's like, why are you looking for reasons not to grant this? It's within policy, and that's what our consultant is all about. It's very dry. I've tried to get him on actually. I've asked him to come on. He said, "Well, I'm just gonna come on and rant." I said, "Well, that's okay." The way he tells stories, you've got this department or this entity called Historic Scotland, and their job is to preserve buildings, right? So ideally, they wouldn't want you to do anything with it because they don't care what happens to it, but they just want it preserved. So, the frontage, the cornicing, even the what we call the plan layout, which is actually changing the dimensions of the rooms, right? So they don't want you to do that either. So they in an ideal world, they would just want it preserved. Just leave it. Just they don't.
Even if that means that it's empty, derelict, and falling
It
down,
will fall
yeah,
down
that's fine.
eventually. That's fine because it's preserved. Um, Anyone that works in Historic Scotland, please do, contact us because I'd love to talk to you about this.
We no, we had a really good experience with Historic Scotland, even with Stafford Street. Look, the very first application we put in with Stafford Street, Historic Scotland did have a problem with us moving walls,
Yeah.
right? That was
But
fine.
but that to
So
me but that it wasn't fine for me. That I thought that was crazy. It's like, look, literally 2 doors down, there was somebody knocked 7 bells out of the same kind of building that we did and put 3 flats in there. How can you do that without knocking down internal walls exactly? You can't, right? So, it's the inconsistency, I think, is the thing that I really struggle with. So, of course, but why can't I move a wall, like, 2 feet? I mean, what difference is it gonna make? Often, and this is where I again got a bit of a problem. They've not even seen the building, not even been in it.
yeah,
Like,
no,
I
that's true.
guarantee you, I still say, and I still challenge anyone who's listening who works in this department, come and talk to me. When it came to John's Place, the second development, they didn't even go there. I've never seen it. No one's been in that building from Historic Scotland.
Yeah, but also, yeah, but so what
They've got no
happened?
idea what it looks like inside. None. 0.
So what happened, give a bit of a history lesson now, is that back in the 19 blah, 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 whatevers, somebody came along and said, God, we've got to make sure that these buildings are looked after. So they walked on the outside and just went, list that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, without actually going in. So they know that it's listed, it's on a register somewhere as being listed, but no one has actually been in to see what has been listed.
Nope. They have no idea. They tell you preserve the cornicing, but they haven't seen it. So they don't know what state it's in or even if there is any cornicing.
And so this is the conundrum, right? Because the architect needs to put photographs of the building in its current state in with the planning app or Or do they? That there's another question. And then that can obviously be looked at by the various departments. I think, look, let's not give Historic Scotland that hard a time because they really
I kind of want to though. I'm sorry. When you're somewhere that's got a lot of historic buildings like Edinburgh, it's like they're all listed, and it's like, but turning what is a decrepit old office building that was horrible into a, what I think is a beautiful boutique hotel. I mean, what's the problem with that?
and the irony is because these buildings have been used as offices, there has been no listed building consent given to put sockets right in the middle of the paneling or Wi-Fi cabling that's all trunked and looks really, really ugly on the wall and drill through the cornicing to get cables for the Wi-Fi.
They just do
Like
what they wanted.
they do
So
what they
they'll
want.
get
There's no
okay.
listed building application going in for doing that kind of stuff. So when you buy the building and you're like, "I'm gonna sort all this out. This is awful. I'm gonna restore." They're like, "Oof, I want you
Well,
to keep that
want to
fireplace
keep it.
there." You're like, "Bloody
Yeah.
hell, that's where the bed's going. That's gonna be a bit tricky." So it is a bit of a game to play with, okay, what they want to preserve. Yes, we need to demonstrate we are restoring, but I'm gonna take some of this on our own shoulders, Nick. I actually think, and our planning consultant was against this. I'm gonna overrule him on this. When we do this the next time, God, if we ever do, I think we need to prepare a kind of like a presentation on what we've historically done to the buildings and now what they are, so that there's no doubt. Like, we're not some charlatans coming along to bish bash bosh this place. We want to actually preserve the building. We want to be sympathetic to the fact that it's a historic building because that's actually part of our, unique selling point as a business and our branding. So if we put all that together with photographs of what Staffordshire used to be and what it is now, and John's Place, what it used to be and what it is now, I actually think come the third application, they're gonna struggle to argue against us because we have done everything.
I love your optimism.
I know. I'm just probably in a good mood today, get me
I
tomorrow, I'll
I
be like,
honestly think they
"Sod
wouldn't
it."
even look at it. The impression I get a lot of the time, this may be wrong, again, please, argue if you're working this in this area, is, I think they're either too busy or, there's so many things going on that it's almost like a no first. Yeah, it's nice to say no. It's easier to say no than it
So
is
let's
to
give some
actually sit down with
examples. Yeah, so let's give some
alright.
examples of little scenarios that have, come about. So first one would be they have to respond within a certain time frame. Okay,
And this
so
is
they
general planning, right? Back to general planning.
back to general planning, right? They have to give a decision within 8 weeks,
Normally, 8 to 10 weeks, I think it is something like that.
something
I
like
think,
that.
again, each council will have a different kind of service level agreement, but generally speaking, it's about 8 weeks. They
Yeah,
need to have
responded.
responded.
And we've had in the past a scenario where we are literally days away from that deadline. Days. There's not been any communication, even though planning consultant's been chasing, chasing, chasing. And then the night before the deadline, an email saying, "We think your client needs to revise these drawings. Otherwise, it's not gonna look good for them." And so we go back immediately saying, "Cool, we will revise them. Let's talk about what you want revised." And then the next morning, rejected. It was like, What was the point of actually giving us a heads up?" Because she took the deadline. It was like, "Here's my 8-week deadline on the day, and although I've started the line of communication on revising drawings, boom, I'm just gonna get this off my desk and you're rejected."
Yeah, just easy to reject. Right.
So
So
that's 8 weeks wasted.
again, I mean, we're just talking about our experience, and this doesn't, apply to every council across the board, but that was our
No,
experience. So we were like, well, what do we do now? Let's just got to basically start again, reset the clock at 8 weeks and do it again.
correct, correct.
So what and that was, and we actually probably incorrectly kind of decided to, our planning side was like, you should complain, we should put a complaint in. So we did actually put a complaint in to say this is outrageous. We're here to talk to you, talk to us. We even offered an extension so that they could have a bit more time to look at it properly. It went to the chief planning officer who looked at it and then came back and said, no, no, we're not, we don't agree. You just have to resubmit. So we resubmitted and the case got allocated to guess who? The original planning officer who had rejected us the first time
So that is
and who
the
we complained
bummer.
against. So it's like, awesome.
Yeah, so now we've had a complaint against. So yeah, that we we're far more as personality-wise, people who would be like, right, let's sit down and have a chat and let's come to a compromise. Whereas our planning consultant is very much like, screw them. They are terrible. They don't know what they're doing. I know more than them and I will get this through. And, we don't know how planning officers are going to take that, but my gut tells me they're probably not going to take that well. But he does get a lot through planning because he knows the policy and the law inside out.
He said
So
it to us at the beginning, "I'll get you it. I'll get you all of it." And he did,
yeah,
but my goal was a struggle and a fight all the way. And
it's
it
just
and
time.
and that's the thing, it just in my opinion, and I'm trying not to rant, is it shouldn't have to be that way. It's like if they're understaffed and they haven't got the time, get more staff, train people up, I don't know, maybe that's too simplistic, but then you got, a couple of our planning officers, you email them, you get an auto response. I don't work Tuesdays and Thursdays. All right, so you do a 3-day week. Okay, cool. One of those days is a Friday, email on a Friday at like 3 o'clock. End of no, we've gone home today, out of office, back on Monday. Cool. So it's actually a 2.5-day week. Okay, right. So that's the kind of thing that you kind of up against, or we have been up against anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
it was tricky, it was tricky. So, you've got the other thing is that you put in your planning application, and then there needs to be a consultation period, and what that's when they're waiting for the reports to come back from the various departments, and of course, the public need to be notified, or those who this is potentially going to affect need to be notified. So that would be the neighbors,
NIMBYs.
businesses. Okay, you said you wouldn't run, and
Yeah,
you've
so I
done
can't help it.
nothing. Okay, it's like role reversal. I'm, like, very calm about this all, but you're ranty ranty. So the letters get sent to all the neighbors on the planning application, and they direct them to the portal with the plans and all the rest. And then that gives people the opportunity to comment, to support, to object, or make comment. Now, of course, people can object, that's their right, and they do, but it depends on what basis their objection is made, and if someone was to object saying, "I don't like the color of the internals," or something, that would just be ignored. However, it's now an objection against the planning application. When you have a scenario where the public are going to be asked to make comment, pass comment, in order for your application to go to a committee decision rather than just one person, you need a minimum of 15 supporting comments. Now, those 15 supporting comments can literally come from anywhere, but ideally you want it to be people who are local to the area and have, positive things to say about it. Now,
Yeah,
one of
we
our
made a bit of a
scenarios.
we did made a bit of a, I think, error when we did that, didn't we? Because we asked, people who knew what we did to, give us some supporting comments, and they kind of all said the same thing, and I think that got flagged up as, well, we've just cut and paste comments in.
But
Um,
again, that was advice by the planning consultant.
yeah.
He wrote the supporting comment and said, get everyone to copy and paste this in." And look,
So we ticked the
for the
box. It
it
from
ticks the
his
box.
point, it worked because it meant that we'd got our 15 in, so they had to go to committee, and it
Mm.
almost didn't matter what it said, but it kind of does, because when it comes to the committee, they can look at it and go, "Well, they're just all the same." It's a bit.
But hang on, I'm gonna argue, look, if someone's gonna be really up against, and objecting, they're gonna look for anything. Literally, they will look for everything and anything to be difficult. So, we can sit and go, "Oh, we shouldn't have copied and pasted. We should have, varied it,"
No,
whatever,
I'm not
but
saying we shouldn't have. We did, and it works because it got to
yeah.
committee, and that was the aim. We had to get in front of a committee.
So let's talk about why you want to get in front of committee and why we did in that scenario. Well, we wanted to in that scenario because we'd already been rejected outright. If we get to committee, you've got 9 people. I want to say nine. I think it's 9 people. 9 people then looking at it, and the planning officer will talk about what's on their report, why they think it should be approved or why they think it should be rejected. And then you've got a vote 5 to 4 or whatever it's going to be with the 9. But you've got some other sensible brains in there.
Allegedly.
Well, okay, calm with the rant. So it would be useful in this scenario to be reaching out to your local council, politician that's in office to try and get some kind of support from them. because you find a lot of these politicians, councillors tend to rotate and maybe be on that committee. Unfortunately, you cannot attend. Well, in Edinburgh, you can't. I know in some places you can. You can go and you get your 3 minutes of, saying your piece and why this is a really good idea. But in our case, we were not allowed to do that. No representative for us was allowed to do that. It's just a case of going to committee and see what happens. The thing is, if it goes to committee and it's rejected, you can still appeal. You've still got routes to go down.
But the whole point of the committee is they should be focusing on policy. They should be looking at, does the case fit policy, right? And the planning officer would need to be able to say why it doesn't. So that's how a system should work. But in our case, I mean, it literally came down to flip of a coin, didn't it? Pretty much. Came down to flip of a coin, and for random reasons, that in Edinburgh, the way the council set up, you had Green Party candidates sitting on the committee, and they were saying, well, where, they've got car parking spaces here. Where's the bike parking spaces? And obviously, if we'd been there, we could have said, well, how many people do you know that strap their suitcase to their back and cycle to a hotel? Probably not that many. So why do we need bike parking?
They were absolutely livid that we had parking spaces until somebody pointed out, "Well, we
Mm,
bought it
You're already there.
with the parking spaces. They were already there. We haven't created that, right?"
Yeah.
So one of the conditions of the planning was that no guest was allowed to use the parking. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Fine.
that we had to put an undercover bike storage
Yeah. For
facility.
all the guests that cycle from London up to Edinburgh with their suitcases.
And Nick, have we done that?
I've yet to have a guest that cycled with their suitcase.
But have we got, an undercover bike parking facility? No. But,
I haven't noticed one.
uh, we could say it's under the stairs. Anyway.
Anyway, right. So unfortunately in our case, it did come down to flip a coin. It shouldn't have, but it did. And this is kind of what you're up against sometimes. We won the day in the end. We got the decision, but it was pretty close and it shouldn't have been. And that was what was really frustrating for us. And then, right, once we got the main change of use and listed building for Stafford Street, in order to make it work as a 15-bed hotel, we needed to put a dormer window on the front. And at the beginning, our consultant was like, "You'll never get it. You'll never get that. Right? We'll get you the change of use and we'll get you the listed, but you won't get the dormer." But after it was finished, we went, "Right, we're going to go to dorm." We went, "Okay," and we put it in, sailed through.
Do you know what though? I think because that poor planning officer was so sick of us, or so sick of our planning consultant, because he battered her, because there's a little twist in the tale where it went to committee, we were granted everything we wanted, and then they turned around and went, "Oopsie, our bad. We forgot to say that you needed to put a tram contribution.
Because
You needed to."
we were within 150 meters of a tram stop that was
So we
built how many years
forgot
ago?
we forgot to say that actually you need to contribute £65,000 for the trams, and we didn't discuss that as a committee, so we're gonna have to go back to committee to discuss it. But at this point, this was in June, the whole of the council closed down for the summer. Then there was a local election, which meant there was no committee meetings, and our planning consultant said, no word of a lie, "In my 25 years, I've never seen this." He says, "You can't appeal it. You've been granted the permission, but they won't give you the paper because they haven't discussed the tram contributions as a committee, and so nothing's been agreed, and therefore there's no way forward." And
And
he
so,
says, "I've just
and without the
never heard
piece
of
of
it."
paper saying permission granted, we couldn't refinance, couldn't do anything.
Couldn't do anything. We were completely blindsided. I
3 months.
remember we were actually on holiday when this all kicked off, and I remember speaking to planning consultants in every firm I could, think of, and again, head of planning in this one, head of planning in that one, and they're like, "This is insane. We've never ever heard of it. There's nowhere for you to go. You've just gotta sit this out." And it was their mess up. They were the ones that forgot to discuss the tram contributions, not us. So then when it went back to committee again, now legally, they have granted us permission. It's already a done deal. So legally, that needs to stand. All that needs to be discussed is tram contribution. But what actually happened was they went back to committee and they started to discuss, well, should this have been granted in the first place? Because we had this vigilante group of neighbours who'd gone to the local councillor and complained profusely about this, and they put a case together on the fact that it should be rejected. And the council's lawyer was sat there going, you pretty much can't do this," but they went to vote. It went to another vote. It was
It was
bonkers.
bonkers. And yeah,
We got it 5-4, but if that had gone against us 5-4, we would have had a legal case on our hands, which is just I don't even
and
wanna
all
think
and
about
yeah,
that.
for us, the whole of this is time.
Yeah,
So from start to finish, the entire planning process till we could actually get the piece of paper that said planning consent granted was a year.
year and a bit, year and a bit.
Yeah,
And all
and
that
this was
time
very much this was within policy. It should have been permission, yeah, a few tweaks here and there, agree, done, you know? So, I mean, it should have been pretty simple to turn a decrepit, falling down office building into a boutique hotel took over a year.
and, I tried my charm offensive on all the neighbors, right? Because it's really hard to be mean to someone when you're actually being quite nice, but boy, were they mean. So, so mean. And you know what? They're so embarrassed now. Really embarrassed because I'm sat there going, "Look at the building now. Look at all the business it's bringing you." But yeah, you were right.
See
You were right to be so mean.
see all the drug users that used to congregate in the bottom of that well in front of
Yeah,
the building? Yeah,
yeah,
they're not there anymore. You know,
yeah,
happy about that? So,
yeah.
yeah, it
That was tricky. That was a really tricky one, and look, that's unusual, and that was just really unlucky for us. We assumed then that the next one would be way more straightforward, but crazy, crazy, crazy stuff happened there as well.
it was painful in a different way, and it was, again,
It was just really strange. So the planning officer was intimidated and scared of my planning consultant,
refused to meet him, refused to come to site.
refused to meet him, so we demanded a site visit, and so she sent her boss. And I turned up early. There's planning boss with a colleague and me waiting for my planning consultant to come. And she was like, "Off the record, we don't like your guy." And I'm like,
It should have
"Okay.
nothing to do with it.
So what do you want me to do with that information? Like, I can't change my planning consultant now."
But but
Like,
but this also the issue you've got is like it shouldn't have anything to do with it. It's
correct,
a policy
correct.
decision. Does what we're trying to do fit within policy or not? That's it.
Yeah.
What it
Doesn't
should
matter if you
be.
like my guy or not. Yeah.
It is irrelevant whether she likes it. Yeah, I'll go or not. It's like the reason they don't like him is because he knows what he's doing and holds them
Yeah.
to account.
And actually what that meant was we got rejected again
Yeah.
because they didn't like him. Again, they can be really, really pig-headed, dig their heels in. These are people at the end of the day making decisions.
It's human beings, yeah, and they can, within their room, they have, in my opinion, way too much power, and they don't understand the development phase. They don't understand what the point of the planning system is, which is to actually promote development. That's the point of it. Every turn that we come across, it's almost like their default position is no, you can't do anything, and you have to almost fight. I was talking to a friend of mine last weekend, different part of the country, trying to get an old industrial site with like 140 houses. Now that is within policy of like, and you read any paper about housing policy, it's like we need houses, desperate for houses. There's someone who's looking to provide 140 houses on an old industrial complex. 8 years to get planning permission. 8.
Yeah, but your challenge there is because that site has been ring-fenced for industrial. And so, to
But,
change that to resi, that's the battle,
but
right?
why
But I
should it
mean,
be? They
you're
need
right, it's
but they need
policy.
houses.
I know, I
They need
know, I
houses. Would
know.
you rather build it on greenbelt land or on an
Yeah.
old industrial site, brownfield site that's called? Go to the local development plan. We want to convert brownfield sites into housing. Brilliant. Here's a plan, 140 houses. Nah, it's going to take 8 years.
So what was when they reject, they should give you a reason for the rejection. Okay, so let's get back on track without the ranting. So if they reject, they give the reason for the rejection. So then that means that you can then adjust your application to satisfy what their problem was.
What they won't do is tell you what you need to do to get it through planning.
Nah,
They
a
will
bit like
not
the building control.
exactly the same as building
Exactly like
control.
it's
They
exactly like building control.
So you can go to they might come back, and this happened to another friend of ours, Sean. They were looking at, well, we don't like these, I think it was windows or something. I don't like how you've done this bit. And he's like, well, okay, what would you prefer we did? No, I can't tell you that. You need to go away and come back with another plan, and then I'll tell you whether it's acceptable or not. It's like, well, can you not just tell us? Because we don't mind what kind of windows we put in. Just tell us what is acceptable. No, we can't do that. So it's like they're almost going out of their way sometimes to be obstructive, and I don't really understand why. It's incredibly frustrating, and time is money. When you're in development world, it's you know there was pretty much 4 or 5 months for us where nothing happened because holidays, local elections, planning committees only meet every other month.
Oh, and that was the time when the interest rates started to
Yeah,
skyrocket.
yeah.
So
So
it was like,
5 months
okay,
actually cost us, yeah, it's 5
oh,
months of holding costs, bridging finance.
yeah. No, we worked it out at the time that the whole planning process will have cost us over and above what we expected it to cost, an extra 150,000.
Just in holding costs,
Holding
financing,
costs and more reports and more
report.
lawyers. We
Yeah.
needed a lawyer to put that unilateral obligation together so that we could contest the tram contributions. And again, that was a made up number. They started saying you need to pay us 65,000 tram contributions. And then suddenly when it got to the legals, it was 38,000. And then we signed the unilateral obligation. And guess what? When we contested and fought, it wasn't legal for them to ask us for that in the first place. So all that time wasted was literally for something that was illegal, and we had to pay for that. So that is insane. But, you can complain and shout and scream about it or just take the hit and go, "Right, well, we're gonna be better equipped for this next time." You know, it was incredible in Leith that they didn't ask us for a tram contribution, but they probably looked at the history of our business and thought,
And
"Okay, we've been here
realized
bef."
we knew that they couldn't charge it. So it wasn't even a thing, didn't even come up. And this is what I mean, the inconsistency is what's so frustrating.
Crazy. Crazy, crazy. And the challenge we had at John's Place was on the listed building. Historic Scotland had no problem, but the council were like, "We don't want you to put an ensuite in that room there." And you're like, "But you let me do it at the West End. You were cool with it there.
And it
What's different here?"
and it's a hotel. It's a hotel. When, you wanna talk to that officer and say, "When's the last time you booked a hotel room that didn't have an ensuite in it?"
Wow.
Never, right? So why would you, what's the
Oh, but
problem?
you also can't have that room as a communal room either.
Is it,
So
so what
we've
do you want
got
us
to
to do with
use.
it?
Yeah. So you
And
gotta
is it
have
like
it
the
as a.
grand front room, like the prime suite?
Yeah.
No, no, you've gotta have an
And
ensuite
and the
upstairs.
nearest bathroom would have been upstairs, so if you were in this beautiful, big, grand room, you'd have to get your wee goonie on and go up the stairs to have a tinkle in the middle of the night. It's just absolute crazy.
And the frustrating thing is, if that had been a Hilton developing a whole row of townhouses into hotels, do you reckon would they have said to Hilton, "No, you can't have ensuite bedrooms"? I don't think so. So, and this is where kind of, the smaller developers,
The cynical brain is, there's some brown envelopes going on here, and of course, there's
no, I
been
just think
lots and lots of.
the bigger companies have more power. The power shifts because they want a big Hilton to come in, but for the small developer, power, you don't have the power. So I think if we're gonna sum up, because we've been ranting for quite a while,
Well,
uh,
you have.
thing with planning is, firstly, make sure that what you're trying to do is within policy. Don't try and fight it, and don't try and get something across the line that isn't within the local development policy, because you're starting off on a negative straight away, and it'll be a battle. So make sure what you're doing is within policy. Get a good planning consultant. That is the key. Don't try and do this on your own. This is not something any one of us who isn't a planning consultant is equipped to do on their own.
Yeah.
You need
I mean,
someone representing you.
there's a lot of architect firms out there that say, "Oh, we do it all." I mean, they would have to be quite a big outfit to have a planning consultant within their office. Recognize that your team are good at what they specifically do, and architects is about, the drawings and the design and whatever. Planning, get the planning people to deal with that so that you can get that through. But, there are architectural firms out there that do the consultancy on planning, as well, but you will pay a very pretty penny for that.
I would
Yes.
personally always recommend getting an independent
Yeah.
consultant, ideally
Yeah.
one who knows the council and has worked at that council. So yeah, look, planning, after everything we've said, it's not something to be afraid of. It's just something to understand what that process is and give yourself the best chance of getting things through. And, to fail, our guys always said, we'll get what we want. It might be a battle, but we'll get it because it's within policy. And that, I think, is the biggest factor here is, you will get it eventually. Like my friend eventually got it in 8 years. I mean, 8 years is ridiculous.
The other thing is once you've been granted planning, you have to action that planning within 3 years or it is lapsed planning. And then going back in and trying to go for it again, that can actually go against you.
But also
So,
you
"Well,
can,
why haven't you done it?"
you'll also see, yeah, if you're still the owner, sometimes you'll see sites and buildings, things come up in auction that say lapsed planning, as if that's a really good thing. Oh, it's already had planning approved, but it's lapsed.
Yeah.
And that can influence anyone who doesn't really know what they're doing, and to think, oh, well, this is all right. This would just be a rubber stamp. We'll just go back in and get it approved. It's not. You're starting from scratch, and they might even look unfavorably on it because you haven't done anything with it. And in the meantime, there might have been a change of government. There might have been a new LDP, local development plan, that's come in the meantime that changes that and to the point where you wouldn't ever get it. So be very careful if you see anything, particularly in auction, that comes up with lapsed planning. There is no guarantee whatsoever that that will get granted again.
Is strap your boots on and get ready for a battle. And yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. But again, it does depend on the size of your application and what you're trying to do and all
So
that lovely fun stuff.
always look at permitted development first. If you can get everything you can get done on permitted development, do that. Anything bigger than that, make sure it's in policy, check the LDP, knowledge is power, and get a consultant on board who knows that council, knows the plan, knows the planning officers, and is confident they'll get things through.
And have fun.
Endure it. Yeah.
Endure the
Resilience
pain.
is important
It's like, yeah.
because
But
planning uplift can, change everything.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It can add significant value just by getting that planning.
So in my friend's case, a shut down industrial complex is worth a sum of money as that. Detailed planning permission granted for 140 residential units. That's a different ballgame. And you're talking mega uplift on that parcel of land there. So was it worth 8 years? Yeah, it will be worth 8 years. But it shouldn't take 8 years, but it will be worth it in the end. So yeah, planning is a battle you have to fight if you're doing these kinds of things. So get prepared for battle.
Hope you've enjoyed the episode. We've got one of our networking events coming up in, when is it, Nick?
Off the top of my head. Yeah, it's coming up in 8th of November is the in-person one. It's in Manchester. To find out more about what we've got going on, see us on our website at thispropertylife.co.uk and you'll see our list of events that are coming up. We've got some in-person events. We've got some online networking events coming up over the next couple of months. So do get involved, come talk to us, come see us. Anything we do to help you on your own property journey, I'm going to use that word. We're happy to help and give advice where we can. So come see us.
Look forward to seeing you then.
Take care.
Bye.